What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite phones for that 300 and under price point. So let's go ahead and get started. My favorite phone on the list, I think, still is the Galaxy S10e. Right now you can find it for $252 right now, and it's extremely impressive at that price. I talk about this phone all of the time on this channel, so it's kind of more of a compact design these days. As you can see, it's sort of smaller, fits in the hand really well. You have a full premium design, glass and metal, IP68, dust and water resistant. You have a really beautiful dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10 Plus at 5.8 inches. It's also 1080p with 438 for the PPI with the punch hole on the right hand side. And overall, it's a very good display. It gets very colorful, very bright display, so I've had no issues with the display at all. This phone also runs Android 11 on top of the One UI skin with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. Basically, it's still a very powerful phone when it comes to just bouncing in and out of social media applications or gaming. This phone does both of those really well. This phone also has micro SD support along with 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. In addition, you do have some very loud stereo speakers as well, which are very crisp and clear, have good bass clarity, and you also have a headphone jack too, which is really nice. The physical fingerprint scanner is side mounted with the power button, which is really nice. It works very fast. You also have the option for face unlock. And this phone, to me, also has some very good cameras. So it's got a 12 megapixel standard and a 16 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video and a 10 megapixel selfie with 4K video. You get very good colors. Sometimes you can get a little bit over contrast colors, but as far as detail is there, dynamic range is there. The ultra wide takes great photos. The selfie camera actually takes some really good photos as well. So it does perform really great if you're in some pretty good lighting, which I was really happy with. And video is also pretty sharp on here as well. I guess the only downside with this phone would be battery life. Battery life isn't all that crazy. It's a 3100 milliamp battery, so you average around maybe 6 hours of screen on time for the average person. You also get wireless charging and reverse wireless charging, which means you can charge another device with this phone, which is pretty cool. And you also have Samsung desktop support as well, which is a really nice perk. So definitely check out the S10e. Next is the LG G8X. So I think this is a very good deal depending on if you're a power user. You can pick this up for around 200 bucks. Again, all links will be down below. You have a full premium design, aluminum frame, glass back on here. You also have an IP68 dust and water resistant rating on here. This phone has a beautiful OLED display, HDR10 at 6.4 inches. It is 1080p 403 for the PPI. Overall, it's a pretty nice display. You have the water drop notch, it's fairly bright, and you get some really vibrant colors. You are running Android 10. This is upgradable to Android 11 and is on LG's update list to get even more updates. You also have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. Basically, it's still a very powerful phone when it comes to, again, social media applications, gaming. It is going to be very good for that. I do have a full gaming test on the channel if you want to check that out. You also have on here micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and also 6 gigs of RAM on here. You have a 3.5mm headphone jack with the quad DAC, which is really nice, along with stereo speakers as well, which is nice. They get pretty loud, sound pretty good. You also have NFC on board with a fingerprint sensor under the display, which isn't the fastest, but it works fine, so I don't really have any complaints with it. But you also have on here some pretty respectable cameras on here, a 12 megapixel standard and a 13 megapixel ultra wide. You also get 4K video with a 32 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 4K. So overall, for image quality, I was pretty happy with that. As you can see, dynamic range, pretty good natural color science with this phone as well. Overall detail is there, so you get some really good shots and good lighting, so I really didn't have any issue with image quality. And remember that this phone also is compatible with a dual screen case. You can buy a dual screen case and basically turn it into two phones for a true multitasking experience. You also have a 4000 milliamp battery with 21 watt fast charging, and wireless charging is on board as well. So the G8X is definitely a phone you should consider. The Samsung Galaxy A52 is also a pretty solid phone. Now you can find this much cheaper on eBay, I believe, but they also have them on Amazon as well. But this phone is really awesome if you want to get it. It's around that $300 price point, and not a flashy, design on here. It's a plastic design. I do still think it looks pretty good. It has a matte finish, so it doesn't pick up fingerprints and stuff like that. It's actually IP67 dust and water resistant. This phone actually has a Super AMOLED 90Hz display, so one of the best looking displays on this list, with the punch hole, really vibrant colors, and overall just a silky smooth display, which is something that I really like. You have Android 11 on top of One UI with the Snapdragon 720G processor and Adreno 618. So it's not the most powerful processor on this list, but it will get you through, multitasking, social media, casual gaming here and there. Definitely can do that. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on this guy. You also have some really nice sounding stereo speakers, very loud, good bass quality. I was really happy that they added those. And you also do keep the headphone jack, which is really nice as well. NFC is on board. You have the fingerprint sensor under the display. It's pretty fast, so I haven't had any issues with that. You also get face unlock as well if you don't want to go that route. And the cameras are actually the highlight on the A52. I think this phone takes some excellent photos for a mid-ranger. A 64 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide. Then you have a 5 megapixel macro camera and 5 megapixel depth sensor with 4K video on the front and back with a 32 megapixel selfie. So I was really happy with overall image quality, just the color signs on here. Detail was really good on here. The selfie camera was really nice, skin tones. I was really happy. And then you have those additional lenses like the macro lens to get really close up. So I was happy with the A52's cameras. I thought they were pretty solid for a mid-ranger. This phone also has a pretty good battery life as well, a 4,500 milliamp battery with 25 watt fast charging, so it charges pretty fast as well. And I think this is some of the best battery life on this list actually. And again, if you get the 5G variant, you will get a slight spec boost, but overall I really like the A52 here. So if you are just looking for an iPhone, I think the iPhone SE 2020 is pretty solid as well. You can find this for a little under 300 bucks. And yeah, this is overall just a solid phone. I think mostly because of the processor on here is just blazing fast. As you can see, the design is pretty much the recycled iPhone 8 design, which is not terrible, but it does look a little dated to me. But you do have an aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant on here, which is nice. It's a very compact phone. It's at 4.7 inches, so it's a very small display. 720p plus, 326 for the PPI. Overall, the display looked fine to me, honestly. Again, you do have a little bit of bezel up front, but overall display quality actually still holds up. It is upgradable to iOS 14, and this phone will get updates for years and years to come because you have the Apple A13 chip, which is just extremely fast when it comes to just bouncing in and out of applications, multitasking, gaming. This is a very powerful phone, so that is one of the things that I really love about this phone. There's no SD card support, of course, 64 gigs of internal storage and 3 gigs of RAM. You have stereo speakers which sound pretty solid. No headphone jack, so do note that, of course. And NFC is on board with Apple Pay, of course. The fingerprint scanner is on the front with Touch ID. It works really well these days, especially with the whole mask thing. And also the cameras on the iPhone SE 2020 are actually pretty good, but there's actually just one camera, a 12 megapixel standard with 4K video, and then you have a 7 megapixel selfie. It takes some very good photos, even just for a single lens. I wish it had an ultra wide, but it is what it is. But just for anyone that wants to snap a photo and get a really good image, this is gonna do it. Good detail, good skin tones, good color signs on here. Overall, it's extremely solid. It's great for FaceTime and stuff like that. So I really like the iPhone SE's video as well. So overall, I think it's pretty solid, even though it only has one lens. You do have a 1,821 milliamp battery on here with actually wireless charging as well, which is really nice. So overall, the battery life is not that great. It's lacking in that department. You probably will get around 4 hours, 5 hours if you're a lighter user. But overall, it's still a pretty good phone to consider. Last is the Redmi Note 10 Pro. So you can find this for around 300 bucks solid. And honestly, it's just an excellent deal. So you do have on here a glass back plastic frame, IP53 dust and splash protection on here. This phone is probably has the best display on the list. It's an AMOLED 120 Hz HDR10 display, so it's just silky buttery smooth. It's AMOLED, so beautiful colors at 6.67 inches, 1080p, 395 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful display. Does look really nice. You have Android 11 with MIUI 12 with the Snapdragon 732G and Adreno 618. Again, not the most powerful chip on this list, but you will be able to handle applications fine. Gaming on here casually is fine. I do have a gaming test that you can check out. Micro SD support and 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. Depending on which variant you get, you can get 128 gigs as well. And there's also a headphone jack on here, as well as stereo speakers, which sound really nice, which I was really happy with. You have NFC, and you also have an infrared port, so you can use it as a remote controller. You also have a fingerprint scanner side mounted as well, which is really nice. And this phone actually has pretty good cameras now. There's a 108 megapixel or a 64 megapixel version, depends on which one you get, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth. 4K video with a 16 megapixel selfie camera. Overall image quality was pretty good for this phone. I really could not complain. You get tons of detail as well with this phone. Pretty good color science, a decent selfie camera. Overall, I was really happy with image quality. This overall phone is just a really solid package as well. And you get a massive battery, a 5020 milliamp battery with really nice fast charging at 33 watts. So this thing charges pretty fast as well, and you get excellent battery life, pretty much all day battery life. So thanks for watching this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.